Foundayo's headline number is 11.1% average weight loss, but that is not the number you need to focus on. What matters is how many people actually lost 10%, 15%, or 20%. At the highest dose, 54.5% reached 10%, 35.9% reached 15%, and 18.4% reached 20%. The 20% target was hardest. Fewer than 1 in 5 people reached it. Imagine 100 people assigned to the highest dose group in the 72-week trial. About 55 crossed the 10% line, about 36 crossed 15%, only about 18 crossed 20%. So a 20% loss happened, but it was nowhere near the typical result. At the highest dose, 45.5% did not reach 10% weight loss. Nearly 2 out of 3 did not reach 15%. More than 4 out of 5 did not reach 20%. The average blends all of those people into one neat number that nobody actually has to match. These percentages come from one 72-week trial, and who was in it changes how you read them. The trial included 3,127 adults with obesity or overweight plus a weight-related health problem. People with type 2 diabetes were excluded. Participants were assigned to Foundayo or placebo, a pill with no active drug. Every group received a reduced calorie diet program and advice to increase physical activity. Average weight loss changed with dose but not in equal steps. It was 7.4% at 5.5 milligrams, 8.3% at 9 milligrams, and 11.1% at 17.2 milligrams. The increase from the lower dose to the middle dose was modest. The largest jump came between 9 and 17.2 milligrams. Think of the trial as 3 finish lines, 10%, 15%, and 20% weight loss. The first line is 10%. On 5.5 milligrams, 32.5% crossed it. On 9 milligrams, 39.8% crossed it. On 17.2 milligrams, 54.5% crossed it. Higher doses moved more people across that first line. For 15% weight loss, the success rates were 14.3%, 20.1%, and 35.9% across those same 3 doses. At the highest dose, roughly 1 person in 3 reached 15%. 2 out of 3 did not. The second finish line already separated the smaller group, who lost at least 15% from everyone else. At the 20% finish line, the crowd gets much smaller. Only 5.9% reached it on 5.5 milligrams. The rate was 8.9% on 9 milligrams. At 17.2 milligrams, it rose to 18.4%. Better, yes. Common, no. The jump from 8.9% to 18.4% is large, but 18.4% still describes a minority. Looking only at the highest dose group, the results can be split into 4 separate ranges that do not overlap. About 45.5% lost less than 10%, 18.6% landed between 10% and 15%, and 17.5% landed between 15% and 20%. The remaining 18.4% reached at least 20%. That is different from the earlier percentages I gave you, which overlap. Someone who lost 22% is counted in all 3 targets. You cannot add 54.5%, 35.9%, and 18.4% together. Think of them as 3 increasingly difficult gates. That overlap is why the 3 numbers describe milestones, not separate groups. The drug's effect becomes clearer next to the placebo group. In the placebo group, 13% lost at least 10%, 6% reached 15%, and 2.9% reached 20%. Those participants still received the diet and activity program. Foundayo did not create weight loss from nothing. It shifted many more people toward the harder targets. Even so, at the maximum dose, almost half of participants did not lose 10% of their starting weight. That does not mean the drug failed for every person below that line. The higher dose moved more people across each target, but nearly half stayed below 10%, while others reached 20% or more. Having 18.4% of participants lose at least 20% is still a meaningful result. That level of loss can be a major change in body weight. The trial shows that this amount of weight loss happened in a real group of participants. It also shows that most participants did not get there. For a person starting at 220 pounds, 10% is 22 pounds, 15% is 33 pounds, 20% is 44 pounds. Those are not small differences. When someone says, Foundayo causes 11% weight loss, that sentence hides the difference between losing 22 pounds and losing 44 pounds. There is also a second trial that matters if you have type 2 diabetes. The pattern was similar, but the percentages were lower. At the highest dose, 45.6% reached 10% weight loss, about 25.9% reached 15%, and 10.8% reached 20%. The average weight loss was 9.6%. The 20% finish line looked very different in the diabetes trial. Without diabetes, about 18 in 100 reached it at the highest dose. With type 2 diabetes, about 11 in 100 reached it. These were two separate trials with different people, so we cannot say diabetes itself caused the lower numbers. The diabetes trial simply had lower weight loss rates. The lower doses tell the same story. In the diabetes trial, 22.5% reached 10% on 5.5 milligrams, and 31.1% did so on 9 milligrams. For 15% loss, the rates were 6.7% and 14.4%. For 20%, they were only 2.6% and 4.4%. The gap between doses was still visible at every target. Nobody starts Foundayo at 17.2 milligrams. Treatment begins at 0.8 milligrams. The dose rises in steps, with at least 30 days at each level. In the trial, people assigned to the highest dose did not reach 17.2 milligrams until week 20. That timing matters when you compare your early results with the final trial numbers. Early comparisons can be misleading. If you are 6 weeks into treatment, you are still in the early dose increase period. Comparing your 6-week result with a 72-week headline number makes little sense. The finish line percentages were measured after roughly 17 months, not after your first bottle. A short early result and a long trial result measure different stages of treatment. Those percentages also include people who did not finish treatment. In the highest dose group without diabetes, 24% stopped the trial drug. At week 72, 15% had missing weight data. The analysis still included everyone assigned at the start. Researchers filled in those missing weights with a rule they locked in before the trial ended. The headline percentages are not a highlight reel containing only perfect finishers. They were designed to represent the people assigned to each group, including people with missing final measurements. So when you hear 54.5%, 35.9%, and 18.4%, those numbers are designed to represent the whole assigned group. They do not describe only the most successful participants. The number you should use depends on which trial population looks more like you. Without type 2 diabetes, the first trial is the better reference. With type 2 diabetes, the second trial is more relevant. Use that trial as your comparison point, then judge treatment by your own measured weight trend. That keeps the comparison closer to people like you than a headline average does. That is the real Foundayo result. Not one average, but 3 very different finish rates. About half reached 10% at the highest dose, fewer reached 15%. 20% was the exception, not the rule. Your scale will eventually tell you which path you are on, while the trial shows how often each target was reached. Medicine simplified. That's what this channel does. If you want more, hit subscribe. This is not medical advice. Consult your doctor.